Welcome to The Adoption Curve, the show where we explore how leading organizations are transforming their approach to turn technology adoption into a strategic advantage. In each episode, we'll sit down with a learning and enablement practitioner to get their inside story on how they're helping their organizations adopt and maximize their technology investments. Let's dive into today's episode. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Sean. Excited to be here.
Likewise. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this conversation. I know we connected initially at Pulse, and one of those side conversations I think could have went on for another couple of hours with me grilling you with more questions and trying to get more insights out of one, your amazing story, but secondly, all the incredible things at HubSpot. I think by way of just kind of kicking this conversation off, it'd be great to just better understand your background, kind of how you got into the HubSpot world, and then where you are now.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited for this conversation. I agree. I think we could have talked for hours at Pulse in that like entryway area, but it was great to meet you in person and be able to have this conversation. So I'm Courtney Sembler. I currently am the Senior Director for HubSpot Academy. This is a very exciting time as this is my 10-year HubSpot Hubiversary, as we would call it. I will hit 10 years in the next couple of days, which, to speak of a journey, I don't think you could have convinced me 10 years ago I would still be at HubSpot. It's been just an incredible learning curve and journey. But I initially came to HubSpot 10 years ago from the nonprofit space. I was working for an environmental nonprofit. I was managing our CRM, which not to be named which CRM we were using, but I was really enjoying that side of it. Sort of a couple of things fell into place, which was I was enjoying what I was doing, but I was young. I worked for a nonprofit. We can all admit that working as a nonprofit doesn't bring you the money that you need, particularly when you're just getting started. And so I was starting to look what that next step would be. And HubSpot kind of fell into my lap. I was actually looking at other CRMs to replace our current one and found HubSpot. And it was sort of this big orange and white company. I was like, I don't know what this is, and dove into it and found an entry-level position. I picked up my entire life, lived on the West Coast, moved to Boston, had been there twice in my entire life, and started working for HubSpot in July of 2015 and really haven't looked back since. Initially started on the customer support side. I did a role called support engineer, which my parents were pretty convinced they needed to call HubSpot and tell them I wasn't an engineer and that I had failed math classes, which is like such the joke that is in my family of my initial job probably shouldn't have ever happened. But trust me, I wasn't an engineer. HubSpot didn't hire me to do that. But I worked with our customers, which was such a great entry point to HubSpot, to our products, and then have been on this academy journey for the last 9 years. It's been a great start, middle, and continuation.
Amazing. Yeah, it's like mom and dad, you don't understand. This is SaaS. Like the job titles are totally made up. They're going to be inflated to sound really important. It just means I'm like answering these support questions, even though engineering is in the title.
Yes, as my parents are both, my mom was a CFO and my stepdad is also like a tax accountant. They were like, your job title has to like perfectly match what you do. And I was like, that's just like not what's going to happen.
Not in the startup world. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So what was the transition into the Customer Ed Academy program? Because I think if I recall, is it 13 years old, right? So this was probably infancy days when you were first getting started?
Yeah. So HubSpot Academy was founded as a program as well as a team about 13 years ago. We just celebrated our birthday early on in June. Our birthday is very similar to HubSpot's birthday. HubSpot is a company for 19 years this year. So we were also really early days of HubSpot's journey, which I think is a really important factor for folks that are just getting started, either in an organization, in a startup. Of customer ed can be a part of that initial startup phase. Brian and Dharmesh, our two amazing co-founders, were really bullish on education being a foundation to HubSpot's growth. And I think that's what you've seen over the last 13 years with HubSpot Academy is it wasn't something we did when we hit a certain scale. It was something we did from day one and, obviously with a much smaller team. But I entered into the Academy space. We were really right at that brink of starting to talk about how we did things more with process, more with organization, with a bigger team, with bigger initiatives, and came into the team as an inbound professor. That's what we call our curriculum developers, our instructional designers. Again, another SaaS term to make it sound fun and engaging. And I taught all of our email marketing content. I taught our customers about how to use email, what it meant from a product standpoint, why it was core to the inbound methodology. And from there, started to really help us think about what it would mean for us to scale this, what would mean to have all of this in multiple languages, to do it faster, to create certifications in less time, all of the classic scaling questions you get when it comes to creating content for a company like HubSpot.
Brian and Dharmesh, certainly outliers in many different ways. Do you have any advice for those folks whose leadership are definitely not thinking customer ed early days? How does that CX, CS, whatever the team that's currently duct taping that together now, and like, hey guys, we really need to be thinking about more of a structured educational academy approach. Anything that those leaders that like stood out to you as like, hey, we should be using this in language to our leadership to maybe get a little buy-in as to why this is a now problem, not a when we get to that point problem?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And, I think the disclaimer here is like Brian Dharmesh, I think were just more prone to education. That was the methodology they were teaching with inbound. It was very attract people to your website, don't, yell at them with paid advertising. And so education was such a natural fit there, which is true today, right? When we think about the changing landscape with marketing, with AI, and trying to teach to not just the human, but also to ChatGPT, education is still very much a part of that. But for advice that I would have when you're first getting that conversation started, particularly with senior leaders, is there's going to be a problem on the virtual whiteboard, right? There's going to be something that they're talking about. It's most likely going to be retention, acquisition, or activation. Start with one of those and talk about how education can solve it before you try to do it all. That's where Academy started. We were a great retention tool. We can do support deflection. We can help you retain customers. We're not even going to worry about activation or acquisition yet. And we started with just live content. It was all webinars that we did 3 times a day, 3 times a week. And that is what got us into the conversation, that sort of that door open to have the wider conversation about, hey, there's actually a difference in the webinars we're teaching versus your normal webinar because it's education and it's not marketing collateral. We're not just giving people information. And look at the numbers, not just the attendance, not just, signups, but look at what happens to those customers when they come to our webinars, and you focus it on those small cohorts, show that value in the pockets, and then start to expand on that conversation.
Call out, focus on the small win, get a little bit of momentum. I think we all try to bite off more than we can chew, and we end up trying to solve all these problems, and we have 10% in 10 directions and wonder why we're not getting the buy-in top down. I think that's a really, really great call out of trying to build out a program. As we fast forward to kind of what the team looks like now, I was really surprised at the scale and size of where the program is and then what your team looks like. It's pretty exceptional, in my opinion, in terms of like an ROI on those resources. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So for those listening, the HubSpot Academy team is 65 people. We span all across the globe. So we do multi-language content, Spanish, French, German, Portuguese, English, Japanese. And we do that by having support resources all across the globe. I think that's a really important thing for folks to think about now is it's not just about being able to localize the content, but make sure it's contextual to that region, which means you need that regional context and have those folks in those areas. And the team is separated into kind of 4 main quadrants. Our very classic education structure, that's where all of those content creators sit. We have a program structure. That's really where all that extensibility comes, where we work with external creators. We have our operations lane, which really is the brain of the operation. It makes sure everybody else can do their work really seamlessly. And then, of course, marketing and enablement. You cannot forget about getting the content to the right people at the right time. And so when we think about the ROI, we sort of have those business outcomes for each of the different pillars. For marketing and enablement, it is a lot about that depth and breadth of the content. Are we able to get the install base consuming content at that scale? But when we think about the different scales of the different ROIs, one of the big pieces that we've anchored to is for our content, we really think about the business metrics of acquisition, activation, and retention. HubSpot Academy brings in about 700,000 content leads for HubSpot every year. And this is a huge area for HubSpot to attract new folks to our business. But we don't stop there. We then look at activation. So HubSpot Academy has onboarding programs where we look at initial value of customers coming in who are onboarded through our program. It's a new initiative for us this year, actually. And we look at things like the unified usage of those customers and how happy those customers are in their first 30 days. So I'm really happy to share that our professors maintain a perfect 10 CSAT score for our guided onboarding experience. So the customers going through our onboarding are leaving onboarding inspired, already activated in the tools, and are really ready to get going with HubSpot. And then that long tail that you see for customer education, revenue retention, customer dollar retention. Academy is contributing to about a 13% increase in customer dollar and revenue retention for customers. We measure that by if a portal has at least one active Academy certification. So if just one person in a portal is active in Academy, that can contribute to 10% to 13% increase in customer dollar and revenue retention.
It's incredible. Part of me feels like one of the biggest values coming out of this conversation is just that there's like a white paper reference for teams to be able to go like, here's what's possible when they're painting a blue sky image to their leadership or their teams to get resourcing for this kind of thing, and going like, okay, some courses, like what's that going to do to move the needle? And then looking at the way in which your team has operationalized this at such a level that it's just like weaponized in the best way, right? It's so powerful for the core components of what you're measured on from a public company standpoint to what the teams care about. It's really, really impressive to see those things. I think it's a great sort of spotlight to be able to reference. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing those numbers. I think it's really helpful.
Yeah.
You mentioned the product and the marketing side. I have to imagine at the scale that your team is at, this has to be an incredibly cross-functional program, to say the least. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, obviously from the product side, but you mentioned marketing, enablement. The education team has to be able to be so Swiss Army knife between those programs. Can you talk about like how your team thinks through some of that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question too of where even an academy, a customer ed program sits within a business. So academy, I like to say that we pack light and we travel well because we have lived in a lot of different departments within HubSpot. Initially, when I joined the team, we were in customer success. We rolled up into more of a support function. We then packed our bags. We went over to marketing, where we actually reported into the woman who was running our brand because we were doing a lot of the influencer education, methodology education that was really connected to the HubSpot brand at the time. So think early days of inbound marketing, inbound sales. We were trying to get that at the company level and using our courses to do so. And so it made sense for us to sit there. And we're now back in customer success in a scaled segment. So we're working with our scaled CSMs to make sure that digital motion is really up and running. And the interesting part is I actually think it's really beneficial for leaders to move customer ed around a bit because it enables exactly what you're getting at, which is those cross-functional relationships. If we never sat in marketing, it would have probably been really hard to gain their trust. They didn't know us. Customer ed professionals often talk about, well, that's not education, where a marketer might be like, no, I'm educating someone. I'm like, it's all the same thing. We're bringing information to people. You kind of stop at the midpoint and we really take it to the finish line. And being in marketing enabled us to really gain that trust, particularly with our product marketing team. Our PMMs that we work with day in and day out that do all of the messaging for the product are oftentimes like the different side of the same coin as our professors because they need to be speaking the same language. They need to be bringing things out in tandem together. And that's been a really important relationship for us. The way we like to think about it is we want to be in all the conversations that feel important for us to be in and being invited to that table, which means we have to build relationships at every point of the year. There is not one time where we are not trying to build those relationships so that when we need something, they need something for us, we can kind of spin up together. To your point, we are often ticket takers. We have people across the business. They're like, I just launched a new product. It's so important. Are you ready to create education on it? I'm like, well, I just heard about it from you. So no, but we can. And that has been where the important piece of building proactive relationships comes in because we get information a lot sooner. HubSpot just launched our ChatGPT integration with HubSpot, which is really exciting. That came together really quickly internally. And because everyone knows who on Academy to go to, what it's going to mean, what the timeline is, there was none of that internal scuffle of like, well, can they do it? They're like, Academy will do it. This is what they need. And they were shipping that stuff to us in real time. And then we were able to go to market together. And that's, I would say, such a lost like priority for a lot of customer ed leaders You cannot sit in your sandbox by yourself. You cannot be in the corner, or your program will not be as successful as you want it to be. Those numbers I shared are only possible with that cross-functional alignment.
Yeah, I mean, it's true of any organization, right? Even engineering, right? If they're sitting in
Yeah.
the dark and they're building on their terms, and there's not that collaboration, and there isn't those catalysts and those conversations and that cross-functional nature, you're just the silos occur. It's funny how much in these discussions, because we talk a lot about internal L&D, the internal networking becomes like one of the number one tips everybody talks about. Is like, you need to be building relationships at every one of these little veins and tentacles in your organization, so that you become like that trusted partner in these things.
Yeah.
So when things come up, it's like that Slack message, like, I thought of you, versus, hey, this needs to be done by tomorrow type of thing. By the way, here's the context. And you're like, okay, well, that's not going to help anybody, right? So I think the proactivity is huge there. Definitely.
And
yeah.
And just to add to that, the shared language. I think when you talk about internal L&D and customer ed, there are teams that are often speaking a different language than everybody else at the company, because we have different metrics, we have things that might feel a little bit fuzzier to some business leaders. They're like, well, what do you mean by this? And so if you can create that shared dialogue of HubSpot Academy or your customer ed program equals X outcome, and be able to come together on that, that'll enable you and that other business leader to have a better conversation back and forth. And I will say, as a customer ed leader, you have to probably walk about 85% of the way on the networking. I hate to break it to you all, but no one's going to meet you halfway. And the sooner that you realize that, the better you will be. And the better chance that you'll have that someone meets you halfway in the future. But if you don't walk that initial path and have something to give, one of the best decisions we ever made was working with our SEO team and creating a bunch of content that was going to be able to rank really well. Was it maybe the most relevant for our customers? No, but we built that relationship with the marketing team to be able to serve their goals. So then later on, when we needed their help to really help with our customer retention, we already had that give to be able to come back together. And it's an important factor when you're trying to think about spinning that full flywheel, is you're probably going to have to do something that doesn't totally make sense at the depth, but makes sense at the surface, and that's okay.
Love that. It's a long game, long tail focus of like, I'm going to serve this one need now, knowing that I'm going to need and have asks in the future that'll feel very bi-directional if I can build this rapport now, right? So it's like winning that small argument to win the longer game. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is your organization's tie into product, is your in product marketing? That's the main one you get, like product updates from, new initiatives? Like, what does that look like from the product side?
Yeah, actually from the product side, we get a lot of that directly from the product managers that we work with. So, we have a PM that is building like a new pipeline tool for HubSpot, and our professors will work directly with that PM during alpha, private beta, and launch to make sure we have kind of education pairing with that and are learning with them on what those product developments are. We also use a tool internally. So a lot of product teams will do product notifications that either go out internally or externally. And early on, what we did is we created an integration, a Zap, actually, we used Zapier initially, that would zap that product notification into our backend database where all our content was. And we matched the tagging of the product notify to our content. So when a Zap would come in and say the sales tool updated on the dashboard, it would auto connect all of our content that had that dashboard so we could better update those things in real time, and not actually having to wait for someone to tell us what was going on, but to get it as things were going out. So that has been a huge unlock for us, is be proactive, work with the PM. They get busy. They might not tap you in. That's totally okay. We're going to get those updates anyways into our database and then be able to follow up as needed.
That's a really intelligent move to structure some of the automations to help, signal capture at least. Yeah, that was one of the things I was really interested in, because it's kind of learning at the speed of product. Like, HubSpot is world renowned for the way in which your team can push out net new products blows most people's brains at the scale you're at, or just in general for any size company. And, we're constantly talking about like the CE team trying to like run behind and like, what can I catch up to? So it makes sense that you're building some mechanisms, some automations in there to at least check those sort of things. Any other ways that the program has grown like those types of tactics to help with Like the content creation, the editing process, the version control?
Yeah, I mean, we could probably do an entire podcast episode about version control and content creation. I'd break it into like three areas. And, the disclaimer here is a lot of the new AI tools are also helping us with this as we evolve. But when we're just getting started, a couple of things that were really important to us is we actually had to set a goal on what percentage of our content was going to be up to date at all times. Because when you live in this world of ambiguity of what is up to date, what is not, it's really hard to actually build a process to update content when you don't know what you're shooting for. And when you have more than one creator, it can be difficult to say, all right, what percentage of Courtney's content is out of date versus Sean's? So we set a goal, and all of our professors sort of had that personal goal and the team goal. And that really helped us build process of, are you developing something net new? Are you developing something that's an update? And then what level of updates? Is it a total overhaul? So we're basically going to treat it net new. Is it a small tweak? Someone changed a button. We just got to go in and tweak it. Or you know what? This tool no longer exists and we have to replace it. And that gave us a lot of what I would say guidance and like milestones. And that's probably one of the most important things for your team to think about is what are you pathing towards so that you can build process behind it. The second piece is our localization strategy. Localization, it's such a fun one. If we talked about this 10 years ago, like it's impossible, it's so expensive. HubSpot Academy went through just three really big like updates with our localization strategy. The first was we actually have native speakers on the team. We didn't try to just automate everything, just assume we could get, folks to dub it or do voice acting. Like we brought people on the team that could learn the product in that language and create education on it. Because your product team is building the product. Yes, they're localizing it, but they do make adjustments based off the different regions, based off of what that region needs from the product. And so it's an important factor to keep in mind. The other element from like an editing perspective that we got really good at is marrying together the right like role, person, et cetera, with the right process and the right tool. Early on, we kind of tried to have a role that did it all. They were like a curriculum developer and they like edited content and they also did a bunch of other stuff. They were also responsible for teaching the team about all. It was like, no, we need people who are truly editors. That's all they do. We need someone who's an instructional design curriculum developer that's going to help our professors edit and like sort of bring their content to life. And we need someone who's really looking over the operations and the process so that we can go to market with all of this really quickly. And from a tactical standpoint, I would say the three things that were really life-saving was having a tool like Airtable where all of our content was housed, whether it's Airtable, a spreadsheet, I don't care what it is. It needs to be dynamic and all your content needs to be in there and it has to stay up to date in there. Do not lose track of that. The second thing that we did that I was really revolutionary for us was getting a tool. We use Writer where you can upload some of your brand guidelines and standards so you can get real-time editing and then have your editors really focused on the narrative editing. None of that spelling, none of that like HubSpot has a capital S in it. Like that all gets taken care of from the automation. So your creator and your editor are really focused on elevating the content, not just kind of cleaning it up. And the last piece of that is having a standard process. I talk to a lot of people in the customer ed space, and it can be tough when you have the scale that we have and say that every professor can create content however they want. You need a standard process so that you know what is good, what is great, what is not going to be able to go to market, which enables you to bring in other creators. It enables you to move faster, be more agile, all of that. And that comes down to taxonomy, having definitions, and having common places where that content is being developed, templates, all of that.
Beautifully said. Yeah. Great grouping there. Great framework for it. When we think about the content itself, how does your organization break that down between actual academy content, short form, those different formats? What's that look like?
Yeah, so for Academy, we have a bunch of different formats we create content. We initially separate them out into live versus on demand. So we do have live content. This is Academy bootcamps, guided onboarding, webinars, presentations, sending professors to events. And then we have on-demand content. And that comes in the form of super bite-sized short-form content that lives in the Academy catalog. We also have short-form content that lives on YouTube and our social channels. We have more comprehensive lessons courses, certifications, and then for our partner organization, we take that one step further and we have accreditations, which is a combination of a bunch of content and then a very robust exam and application process to accredit them to deliver services on behalf of HubSpot. And within each of those categories, certs, accreds, courses, lessons, short form, we have different categories. So you have agnostic versus product. You have demo, tutorial, best practice, or overview. So you can kind of separate them into some different categories. And what that enables us to do is be really specific of, all right, new product launched. We need a best practice, an overview, a lesson, and that all needs to go into a playlist so someone can take it in a specific order. And that will be the package we take to market versus, you know what, we're really evolving the way we're talking about marketing. We need a new agnostic course that really talks about that narrative. Okay, that's what this package looks like.
So it sounds like you're breaking it down for like the outcome that one might want. If I'm looking for more of a best practice versus like, I need to solve this problem, I need to know the clicks, or I need to like more broadly understand this in more of a actual course that has progression for my learning style. It's interesting that that's an interesting approach. I do like that. We find this internally with our org. There's always a new thing that comes out where like, okay, well, here's how you turn it on, and here's the buttons you got to click, but also why, what's the use case, having a balance. I do like that for each one of those concepts, it sounds like you have different formatting for that, but not just like watch it, touch it, read it, but moreover, actually what the outcome is. Is that decent language to kind of describe that thought?
Yeah, you're hitting on all the right terms here. We use a very simple framework from Simon Sinek: why, how, what. Why is it important to you? How does it actually work? And what is it going to look like? So you can go into any academy video lesson, and you're going to see that format. In a video, it's going to be really short, right? The professor might give you a 1 sentence on the why, a 1 sentence on the how, and then like 30 seconds on what it looks like. But we use that formatting to really guide adult learners to get to the right outcome. And then on the other side, that's also how our catalog is formatted. A learner could go in and say, you know what? I'm really focused on strategy, and I'm really focused on making sure I can have credit for this. Great. They can filter by sort of that agnostic certification, and I want to do it on sales. Can sort of bring that together. So I like to think about it as within the content, it's why, how, what. Outside of the content, when you do search, it's very topic, outcome, format based.
From the leadership side, I'd be really curious how you balance the individual contributors who would have very strong opinions about what is actually learning, what isn't. I think this needs to be long form video, this is what's important. And other people go, no, this is what learning is. How do you balance those things? You have people who are in their specialty and think that that's the right way, but we have like a more cohesive strategy we're trying to nail down.
Oh my gosh. My favorite internal fight that I fight is everything has to be a certification, because that's what gets the search and that's what people want. Everyone wants to be validated. Everything has to be a certification. And no one listening to this would be surprised that I would say that. I've had that conversation with so many different leaders, and it's an interesting one. And it really depends on where you are in your, I would say, growth trajectory of customer education. Early on, you kind of have to give a little bit on that of, if you want the relationship and you want the alignment, you're probably going to go probably a little further left than you want on kind of giving into what they're looking for. One of the things from a strategic standpoint that I've gotten really good traction on is focusing on what our common goal is. What do we want from this content? Do we want to do activation, usage, retention? Trying to find that touch point that makes sense to both of us. Because I've gotten a lot of feedback as a leader is I bring in way too much of my education brain. I will come in to those strategic meetings with my 15 slide PowerPoint, and I'm ready to tell you why X, Y, and Z is and I got shot down every single time, because we're an executive leadership meeting. No one's getting past the second slide. My second slide is just still an intro about how I'm so great at education, right? Like that's not going to work. But what I started to do is really focus on, all right, what do we need to do? Do we need to do some acquisition? Do we need to do some retention? Okay. How long do we expect our customers to be consuming that content? Is it they're going to consume it for the next 3 weeks and then we're going to kind of move on to a new topic? Or is this something they need to learn about probably for the next 18 months? And that actually gives us a lot of what we need to make the right educational decision. For example, There's sometimes we have topics that are really hot. It is just like right now, and we have to talk about it. Great. That is a perfect fit for short form content. I'm not going to slap a certification on it, and it's definitely not going to take us longer than 3 weeks to make because it's going to go out of date in 4 weeks. Like, we have to kind of keep that time restraint. And a great example of this right now is AI. HubSpot Academy is really focused on some longer form AI content because we know it's going to be around for a while. And while AI is constantly changing, some of those best practices of how to think about it are really starting to crystallize. And so we sort of marry of like, you want the right now, great, but we know that this is going to be relevant in 6 months. So we're going to sort of split the difference here and create a course. And my best advice for folks who are having these conversations is go in with a couple of options and kind of guide people to the one that you think is going to be the best for your customers, your customer ed program, instead of, I think what I did very early on as a customer ed leader was like, no, this is the way it's supposed to be. And used a lot of that, like, well, this is how it does in the industry, or this is how it manifests in the industry. And it can really lose a lot of internal traction because while you might be similar to the industry, there are things that you're going to have to give up on. And so I tell that to my team is like, I want to use the industry as a directional guiding system. I don't want to use it as a threat to internal stakeholders or the be all end all of what we're going to do for HubSpot Academy.
You're positive in the bank of getting out of your comfort zone and networking, right? Like, you're taking your specialty, your education, your brain, whatever that is, and then you take it into a session which you have other departmental leaders who are like, what? Like, what's the TLDR of this thing like right now, right? Like, I always think that like the Staples Easy button, like people are always trying to click the like TLDR of the words you're saying right now to get to the value, get to the meat. So I think that's really, really helpful. And zooming back out to like picking one of those 3 big buckets, the acquisition, the retention, what is that core from the Simon Sinek why helps you refine down all the way to the what, right? So I think that's really, really helpful. How does your team think about industry verticals? A CRM the size of HubSpot, I mean, nearly endless from a horizontal application standpoint. Is there any kind of verticalization for like industries? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a good question. We've talked a lot about it over the years, and we have really leaned to, if you think about, breadth and depth, we've really leaned into the breadth on a lot of topics and only really gone deep from an industry perspective when it makes sense. I think you can get caught up a little bit in customer ed actually can't solve every problem. Like, I'm happy to do a little Mythbusters here. Like, we can't actually be the source for everything, or we'd never get any content out there. And so what we've really leaned into is, okay, so from a vertical standpoint, we're going to make sure we have the highlights, the best practices, the core thing, and work internally with our customer proof teams, with our community teams, and with our CSMs to really be able to marry that together with the vertical content. So almost kind of plugging 2 things together instead of trying to do it all ourselves. So our community team has been a really great resource for industry specific content because it's curated on the community. It comes from directly people in the industry. We can then send customers to it. They can have a conversation, get connected with folks. And then we do a lot more of those like industry specific events. So we partner really closely with our community teams, and we've right now are running one of the programs called HubSpot User Groups, which are industry topic specific events that happen all around the globe. And sometimes for Hug events, you can have kind of like a prerequisite, like make sure you take this academy course and you kind of know the basics of what this is, because we're going to really dive in deep on what this means for the manufacturing industry.
Love that. Yeah, I definitely can see the getting lost in the verticalization when you are a horizontal tool yourself. But you know that there's an ask for that, but sometimes it's a little bit hollow from the customer base. Like when you unpack it, it's like, yeah, like this is a problem that all marketers have, right? This isn't unique to manufacturing. This is more of a departmental issue. And so if you can really solve those core components and then connect them with peers at that community level, now they can network in their language instead of you trying to regurgitate that into documentation, which is probably a little bit forced. So I really love that answer. I think that's very, very smart.
I would say the one exception to that has been our developer content. We've gotten really specific on developer content over the years, and we rely really internally on our developer relations team to make sure we have that right kind of vertical content, while a little bit less on industry. There's a lot of nuance in, are you a front end or a back end developer? What does that mean in the HubSpot land? And we've gotten a little bit deeper on those pieces, but the community team and the community resources have really been our solve for scale, and our CSMs. When we work with our CSMs, we're like, great, make sure your customer takes this course or this lesson, and then you talk to them about what it really means for them specifically. Because again, another like myth busting moment, your problems are usually shared with other people. We are not necessarily special snowflakes. While I like to say we are, we're not. And that's where the beauty of, I would say, customer education and community really is. We are two halves of the same whole. And if you don't think about them together, you can actually leave a lot of value on the table. We do actually shared metrics internally now. The community team and I, Evan Hamilton, who runs our community, he and I report together on what is the consumption of Academy and community in our install base, and then break things out for people who need it versus kind of saying our separate programs are like looked at very separately.
Yeah, I love that again, cross-functional reporting, cross-functional alignment with those sort of things. And also like when there is respect and empathy for that other team and the value they bring to the table, they want to prop them up. Like if the CS team understands, like it's actually super valuable for them to have high caliber and high quality content, it makes their job easier, that they're not educating as much because this content can self-serve maybe 50 or 60%, and they can come in and tweak those other components of the nuance they know about their customer or whatever those things are. So,
exactly.
Yeah, really love that like joint approach. It's really smart.
Yeah.
As we're wrapping up here, couldn't go full conversation anymore without talking about AI. You mentioned the AI in terms of like content that your team's sharing, I'm sure on Breeze and those other concepts. What else comes to mind in terms of operationalizing for your team internally for using AI?
Yeah, so we had a goal at the initial part of the beginning of the year to have 100% of our content creators using AI in their content development. And we hit that very early on in about February. And a part of that was testing a bunch of different AI tools to really see what was going to be successful for us. I think there's a lot of headlines out there that says this AI tool will solve everything you need. It's not. We need a bunch of different tools to solve for a lot of different use cases. And for us in the content development, we sort of looked at it in 3 chunks, which is we want to be efficient, we want to be accurate, and we want to go really fast. So we set AI goals around efficiency, speed, and accuracy. And then we married tools to those goals. So from an efficiency standpoint, that's a lot of where the automation comes in. We use a lot of back-end automation, make sure the right thing makes it into the right process at the right time, taking away some of those handoffs that you typically see in a content creation process. From the accuracy standpoint, that's where we started to really lean into using Claude, Gemini, Writer, these places that we could build sort of central knowledge areas and check our content before it went out to market and remove some of that human dependency to do so. One of the best examples of this is we were launching some products in the spring for our spring spotlight, and we had a project in Claude that had all the product documentation, all of the definitions from the PMM team, all of the decks, everything. And then we're able to create a script for our video content based off of that. And that was really the power of that efficiency and accuracy together. It was like, oh, it would have taken us so much time to compile all that. And it was just a common place for us to work. And that's actually where I think customer ed is going to value AI the most, is the common workspaces of we are now actually sharing knowledge in ways that was really hard before, particularly in a hybrid workspace. I can't walk up to your desk and be like, hey, Sean, like, what are you thinking about for this new Breeze tool? Like, I'm going to have to Slack you. We're going to have to set up a Zoom. It's going to be late. It's going to be early. Like, no, now in this AI world, we can do that. And the last, of course, we can't talk about AI and customer ed without talking about localization again. The AI tooling is really speeding up and reducing the cost for localization. It is so imperative from an equity standpoint that our content goes out in multiple languages. And historically, it's just been too expensive to do at scale. And that's been a trade-off we have to make. Now we can get base translations using AI. We can be teaching models about the different nuances in the different languages, and it's going to raise all of those boats up from a speed, accuracy, and efficient standpoint.
No surprise that your team has a programmatic approach to rolling out AI as well. Yeah, it's pretty incredible to see. I think that is a huge takeaway for me, though, is thinking about this is like, obviously, more resources, different scale, but for organizations going, we need to be using AI as this floated sentence that goes out at the end of every email. It's like, but like, why and what are we doing? I love your groupings of that. What problems are we solving with it? How are we going to measure it? What is the impact that actually matters to us? That becomes the measuring stick in which we use to say, is this a tool problem? Is this a process problem? Is this a additional efficiency we weren't even aware of until we started? To your point about like cross-pollinating, this is a huge one. We're definitely seeing that as well. Just the teams being able to reference that material in this shared knowledge base. So beautifully said. I think that that's really, really powerful. Anything else you'd say from an AI perspective for teams who are dipping their toe in the water? Sounds like having a program or a strategy is one, but anything else that comes to mind?
A lot of it at the end of last year was testing. Like, don't be afraid. Right now is the time to test with AI. AI tooling is as cheap as it's ever going to be. There's a lot of articles about that right now of like, it's only going to get more expensive from here, because the more you rely on it, the more those companies will be able to like increase those prices. So honestly, go in, have your team experiment. Initially, we were using one tool and then we're like, well, this one works actually better for this use case. And don't limit yourself. One of the things that we initially talked about to sort of debunk internally was it's not going to just be one AI tool. It's not just going to be this thing and it's going to solve for everything. It's going to be how this thing talks to this thing and how we sort of plug in the middle. And I think that really helped us take away some of that fear that it was just going to be one AI tool that's going to replace all of our content creation. You can quote me on this. You can share it wide and loud. I do not believe that AI is going to replace customer education. I think it will facilitate a new era of quicker production, more accurate education, and actually solving the problems we've struggled with in the industry for so long, which is keeping our content up to date. The second that we can bring all of our product content, all of the different things that are happening, that are changing, those product notifies, like I mentioned, into an agent that can tell us when something has gone out to date and can help facilitate those changes, everyone is going to win. I don't think there's one content creator on the planet who likes to update their content. And if you are one of those, please call me on my phone and we can have a conversation about how you need a hobby potentially. And so it's going to unlock that opportunity for us to get even better at the stuff that we're really good at. It's also going to enable us to get back to more of that, I would say, personalized content that we've sort of said we are delivering on, but aren't really. One of the examples I've been talking about internally is imagine a world where we have all this great Academy content on Sales Hub, and we have all this data about what our average Sales Hub customers use and what's working and what's not. And we can start to infuse those things together and have some outputs that are more personalized of like, hey, Sean, this is not only your lesson on Sales Hub, but it's really specific to the things that we see you're struggling with in your portal. So it's highlighted the prospecting lesson. It's focused on the deal creation video and giving you more of that tailored approach without us having to create 10 different copies of the same lesson, which, for HubSpot at our scale, we'd never be able to do that. And so I'm a big believer that the AI tools are aiding us into a new generation of customer education. I think there's a whole conversation we could have about generative AI videos and, all of that, which granted, I think there's going to be some really great use cases for it. I've never been able to convince myself that hiring a professor for every human language out there is going to make sense. It might make sense to be able to deliver some of that through a, generative AI video. That'd be great. There's some things that don't need a human touch, but there are a lot of things that do. And if we can think about it as the new foundation, the new tool sets that's going to enable us, all these boats are going to rise together, that rising tide. And I'm really optimistic about it. It's something I'm not seeing enough, honestly, in the industry. I think there's a lot of fear still and a lot of, well, it's going to replace us. And I'm like, great. I really hope it replaces our update strategy. I would love that. I would pay a lot of money today for the person who comes up with an easy way to update all my content, because then my humans that are creating all this amazing content are 100% focused on all the new stuff they have to do. I don't know about you, but that seems like a dream I've had.
I mean, there you have it, folks, right? Like from a HubSpot perspective, it seems like just glass half full here, right? And like just optimism, that's how we certainly look at it. That's what we're trying to share a little bit more about, that this is actually it's really exciting. It really actually
Yeah.
is something that's going to be making those who are willing to invest in this to be the force multiplier in their organization and actually get to the work that matters from every corner of an organization. It's just empowering, making you more of a manager to these sets of agents that could be specialists in work that hopefully you probably don't want to do anyway, right? To make you focus on the stuff that's actually impactful. So yeah, I think the fear is just the wrong way to take this. Obviously, you guys at your scale, you're still educated and trying and testing. And like, I think that speaks volumes to how seriously you take this and how much of an opportunity you guys see out there for it.
Definitely. And, I hope too, for folks that are listening, like there's no right AI tool for your customer education strategy. It is going to be the same conversation we've had with years. There's no right video editing tool. There's no right camera. There's options. This is another just great place too for the team members that you have that want to be innovative and disruptors and to try. Put them on these problems. Give them 4 months to go and figure out what works and what doesn't, and have them come back and say, I liked this, I didn't like that. Like, this is such the perfect time to unleash the creativity, unleash the innovation that sits in all of us, and be able to just get all of that goodness out into your teams and don't hold them back. I know that there are ones in your teams who are ready to do it. Don't hold them back. I hope you're able to unleash them and learn a lot from the next few months.
So Courtney, do you have another 2 or 3 hours we could keep going on all these topics? I feel like if we just keep going, we could solve all our departmental problems.
I'm always happy to chat. For anyone listening, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to have conversations about customer ed, whatever is top of mind, AI, HubSpot. I really enjoy it. And I think there is a real reason to be optimistic about where we're headed. I know there's a lot of questions still out there. I have them too, but I think it's conversations like this that give us the opportunity to ask those questions and start to talk more tactically about what the future could look like.
Yeah, beautifully said. Yeah, I was just going to ask where we could find more, but Courtney's a great follow on LinkedIn. Obviously, if you haven't, check out all the content that they're putting out there herself, as well as HubSpot in general. If you haven't seen their academy, it's top notch to say the least. We point to that; it comes up in the show all the time as a gold standard. So you guys are doing an incredible job. Keep going, and thank you so much for spending some time with us and sharing all these great nuggets of wisdom.
Of course, thanks so much, Sean.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Adoption Curve. If you've enjoyed today's conversation and want more content like this, I highly recommend subscribing to our newsletter, where we break down insights, frameworks, and templates from our guests on each show. To access, go to iorad.com/newsletter. Also, make sure you subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. If you could, we'd also love it if you could leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed and got value out of today's conversation. The Adoption Curve is produced by iORAD, the tool that helps thousands of companies make interactive tutorials in seconds. They're shareable in all the tools you use every day. We'll see you on the next episode.